U.S. President Donald Trump announced late on Thursday that he's extending his deadline for Iran to reopen the crucial Strait of Hormuz by 10 days, reportedly in response to an Iranian government request. In a post on his own social media platform Truth Social, Trump revealed that talks with Tehran to end the war are, quote, going very well, despite what he said were erroneous false statements by what he called the fake news media. Speaking at a cabinet meeting on Thursday shortly before his announcement, Trump sideswept questions about the strategic waterway, indicating that his decisions are made based on advice from his envoys.
I don't know yet. I don't know. Mr. Witkoff and JD and Jared will tell me whether or not they think it's going along. And if it's not going along, maybe not. And we have a lot of time. You know what? It's a day. In Trump time, a day, you know what it is? That's an eternity.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says Washington continues to see a daily increase in traffic in the Gulf, despite not fully securing the strait.
The Iranians believe they are fighting a two-front war. It is the military war that our great warriors are prosecuting, but on the other side, they are trying to take control of the global economy through a choke point that we believe does not exist and that we will overcome. Mr. President, we are starting to see more and more movement in and out of the Gulf today, and this is more than yesterday, and this is the beginning. I am confident that shipping traffic will continue to increase on a daily basis, even before we secure the straits.
The strait has been effectively closed for transit for almost 4 weeks, and with it halting the traffic of 20% of the world's oil flows, skyrocketing prices. On Thursday, Brent crude, the international standard, continued to trade at above $107 a barrel, representing a more than 60% spike in prices compared to pre-war numbers. The halt in exports has significantly increased fuel prices at the pumps and rattled global markets.
The wars in Iran and Ukraine are very much interlinked by Russia, High Representative Kaja Kallas warned on Thursday as she headed into a G7 meeting of foreign affairs ministers in Abbaye des Vaux de Cernay in France. She is calling on the United States to ramp up economic pressure on the Kremlin as it benefits from rising oil prices due to the conflict.
We see that Russia is helping Iran with intelligence to target Americans, to kill Americans, and Russia is also supporting Iran now with the drones so that they can attack neighboring countries and also U.S. military bases. So these wars are very much interlinked. So if America wants the war in the Middle East to stop, Iran to stop attacking them, they should also put the pressure on Russia so that they are not able to help them in this.
Kallas stressed that Europe would join a coalition to secure the Strait of Hormuz, carrying 1/5 of the global oil production, only after the cessation of hostilities.
The war in Iran has now been going on for a month. In an interview with Euronews, the International Committee of the Red Cross demands an end to strikes against civilian infrastructure by all parties involved.
Ms. Buliaric, we are seeing a significant escalation in Iran. How is this affecting people on the ground?
Unfortunately, what we observed today and what we have observed for the past 4 weeks is the fact that civilians are bearing the brunt of this recent escalation. The fact that civilian infrastructure is at the forefront of attacks across the Middle East region, including in the Gulf countries, is unacceptable from a humanitarian perspective.
Are you seeing indications that humanitarian law is being violated, and if so, in what ways?
Deliberate, indiscriminate attacks on essential services can constitute a serious breach of international humanitarian law because they affect people that are protected under these laws. And they create an environment where nowhere is safe anymore. You can come under pressure because you're directly targeted, because your house is destroyed, but you will equally come under pressure and be required to flee if there's no access to drinking water anymore, or if you have no electricity anymore. to ensure access to health and other services that you need for survival.
We are seeing strikes on civilian infrastructure such as energy facilities. What does that mean for the country's ability to recover in the long term?
Every time such attacks happen, we know it will take much, much longer for the civilian population to be able to return to normalcy, but also for economies to return to levels that are necessary to sustain people's welfare and people's existence.
What responsibility does the Iranian leadership bear when it comes to de-escalation and improving the situation for civilians?
The responsibility under IHL is equal for all states. They bear the primary responsibility not to attack civilian infrastructure, to protect civilians, to spare civilians as much as possible from hostilities. Any state conducting deliberate attacks on civilian infrastructure is at fault.
Thank you for your time, Ms. Buljaric.
Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un held talks in North Korea's capital on Thursday and signed a friendship and cooperation treaty. Lukashenko, who was in Pyongyang for the first time on a 2-day official visit, hailed the document as fundamental and said that relations between the two countries are entering a new stage, according to his press service. It also quoted Kim expressing solidarity and full support for Belarus and speaking out against, quote, unlawful pressure on Belarus from the West. Belarus and North Korea are part of a push driven by Chinese President Xi Jinping and Putin to create what they call a multipolar world to challenge Western hegemony. They have both provided Moscow assistance in its Ukraine war, with Minsk serving as a launchpad for the invasion and Moscow stationing tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus.
Maria Klesnikava, the Belarusian opposition leader, is now in Berlin after nearly 5.5 years in prison. She was awarded the prestigious Charlemagne Prize while in detention, which she was only now able to receive. Euronews spoke with her about the future of her country.
Welche Entwicklungen machen Ihnen Hoffnung in Belarus und welche machen Ihnen Sorgen?
Wenn man denkt und spricht über Zukunft, es gibt große Sorgen, so dass Belarus kann ihre Souveränität verloren. Und es ist ganz nah eigentlich, weil ökonomisch wir sind nicht mehr so unabhängig als früher. Und das ist eigentlich ein Teil, es ist Ergebnis von Sanktionen. Wenn die Sanktionen ganz starkes Druck auf Lukaschenko machen, der kehrt sich nach Russland. Und Russland hat natürlich profitiert dafür, dass Belarus keinen Kontakt mit EU hat.
But what about the majority of people in Belarus? Are they moving towards the EU or towards Russia?
Es gibt jetzt eine riesige russische aggressive Propaganda in Belarus und es ist vielleicht sogar viel gefährlicher als Sanktionen, weil es ist schon 5 Jahre vorbei und es gibt jüngere Generationen, die haben 2020 und Proteste nicht mitgekriegt. Sie wissen jetzt nicht mehr, was ist das, was ist was. Und Gefahr ist, dass in noch ein paar Jahren oder noch 5 Jahren es würde schon mehrere Generationen sein, die würden überhaupt nicht verstehen, was EU ist und was demokratische Werte ist.
The EU must therefore communicate with Lukashenko and clearly defend its interests, says Klesnikava.
Und wenn man nicht mit Lukaschenko keine Gespräche wollen, irgendwann kommt die Zeit, der Staat Lukaschenko, die müssen mit Putin sprechen. Und das ist, finde ich, viel schlimmer.
Maria Klesnikava counts on Europe's support. She hopes that engagement and solidarity will, in the long term, strengthen the path towards more democracy and independence in Belarus.
Reactions to the International Olympic Committee's new policy on gender testing were sharply divided. with supporters hailing a long overdue move to protect women's sport and critics warning it risks stigma and harm to young athletes. Transgender women athletes are now excluded from female events at the Olympics after the IOC approved a new eligibility policy on Thursday, aligning with U.S. President Donald Trump's legislation, which banned their participation in the U.S. since February last year.
The policy that we have announced is based on science, and it has been led by medical experts with the best interests of athletes at its heart. The scientific evidence is very clear. Male chromosomes give performance advantages in sports that rely on strength, power, or endurance. At the Olympic Games, even the smallest margins can be the difference between victory and defeat. So it's absolutely clear that it would not be fair for biological males to compete in the female category. In addition, in some sports, it would simply not be safe. Every athlete must be treated with dignity and respect, and athletes will only need to be screened once in their lifetime.
It's unclear how many, if any, transgender women are competing at the Olympic level. No woman who transitioned from being born male competed at the 2024 Paris Summer Games, though New Zealand weightlifter Laurel Hubbard did at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, but did not win a medal. The new eligibility policy is set to go into effect starting with the upcoming Summer Games in Los Angeles in July 2028.